welcome to your Inside Power. My name's Patricia Stepler. Until maybe 10 years ago, I didn't even know about the law of attraction, although I had manifested things in my life that I didn't know how I'd done. And therefore, because I did not understand, I couldn't repeat it. And then I saw my son. And if you've heard my story, you've heard me talk about him, how he manifested a full college scholarship. And I knew he had caused it, but I did not understand how he did it. And that's when I became very interested in finding that out. And that's when I stumbled upon learning about the law of attraction. So even if you don't know anything about it, that's okay, because I didn't until, like I said, about 10 years ago. But I want you to understand the fundamental things that you need to attract things to you in your life, and why so many people don't attract things to themselves. So there's three really important parts that we need. And the first one is an interest. You have to want something. We're here on this planet to expand and grow and to really acquire knowledge, acquire relationships, acquire good health, acquire things that we want to have in our lives, things we want to have, to be, to do, and to explore this beautiful planet. But you have to have an interest. And when you have that interest in whatever it is that you desire, you have to pay attention to it. It's not enough to think about it once or twice. You have to think about it over and over and over again. So you have to see this outer world of what it is you want in your mind's eye. And that's how you start to acquire things. I think I told last week about the story of winning a diamond ring, this particular ring I have on today, and how I had seen it on my finger so many times before I actually won the ring that I just had to have it. Like one of those three rings was going to be mine because of my belief that I could get it. And so first I had to focus on it. So I had to desire it. I had to have an interest in it. It had to be more than, oh, I'd like to have one of those rings. I had to figure out and map out a plan for what I wanted. But in the same respect, you also have to be grateful for what you have. And I was grateful. I was always grateful for what I had in my life. I was not one of those people that would whine and complain about not having this or that, because I was grateful for the things I did have. A wonderful family. That's what I really wanted. 3 great kids. And that was the most important thing in my life, was my family. So I was always happy. I was never, angry at life or disappointed. I just kept moving forward. It didn't mean I got everything I wanted at the time, because obviously I didn't understand all this. And so, but you have to have an interest. And you have to have a desire beyond where you are. If you have no desire beyond where you are, you're done. Everything you have is all you'll ever have. Now, will you get new things like new clothing or new piece of furniture? Well, of course. But what I'm talking about is your personal growth and your change, that, you can go from where you are to something greater. I have a friend who owns a tax office, and when we were in a group together, she would say, most people's taxes don't really change much from year to year, because most people don't have a dream or a goal big enough to make their taxes change much. That's what I'm talking about, the things that will make your taxes change, okay? So you are deserving of all that good that you desire in your heart. And you have to start believing that you are worthy of having what you want. And so we have to take an interest, and we have to believe that we're deserving of it. And then we have to realize that we can't just wish or pray for something to happen. We have to put some action behind it. And it's easy to get sucked into something, and it's easy to get very stuck where you are. Sometimes even when we think we're following exactly what we should be doing, you can still get stuck. Well, why do you get stuck if you're following it? Because as Wallace Wattles says in his book, there's a certain way of doing things, a certain way of thinking. And if we're not doing it just right, or we're not thinking just right, we're not going to attract the good that we desire. And I'm going to get into some of those things in just a minute. But we have to keep that keen interest on what it is we want. And as we do that, and as we focus on that, we're going to start to attract into our lives exactly what we need. And as we start to attract it, don't stop believing. I think that was a song, wasn't it? And you have to keep believing that it's going to happen. Because when you start to doubt, or when you think, oh, well, this is what I want, but it can't really happen, then you start to break some of that magnetic power. So if you just think of this very strong magnetic power, but every time you have worry, you have doubts, you question, you don't deserve it, you start to break some of that power, and that's not strong enough to attract what you really want in your life. Maybe that's a good illustration to help you. So we have the imagination that can build this beautiful idea of what you're interested in. So that's step one. Step two is your attention to it. You have to keep focused on what it is you want, and you have to learn to say no to the things that aren't in alignment with that goal. So keep your attention on that goal, and that magnetizes that power. So we're going back to the magnet. So when you focus on it, you're strengthening that magnetic power. Worry, doubt, unbelief weakens it. But when you focus, you strengthen it. And you have to be willing to go the extra mile, to do the things that other people won't do. And that's what separates highly successful people from average or below average successful people, is because they go the extra mile. They do the extra thing. And so often, and be cautious of this, especially if you're really young, be very cautious of saying, well, I'm not getting paid to do that. That may very well be true. And I know early on in my career as an educator, sometimes I would think, well, that's beyond what I really need to do. But oftentimes, I won't say every time because I don't remember, but oftentimes I would go ahead and do it anyway. And why did I do it? Well, for my own self-satisfaction, for one, but because I could see a bigger picture. And I would do things because, not that I necessarily wanted to do them, but I wanted the outcome. And that's what successful people want. It's not that they want to do that particular thing, but they want the outcome. And we always have to keep focused on, what's the outcome we want? Will we go the extra mile? Because you know what? There's magical things out there. They're watching you. Are you willing to go that extra mile? So pay attention to that. And it's not the money necessarily, but it's what we do with the money. And we have to start thinking of what things we want. So it's not good enough to say, oh, I want to make $1 million. That's very weak, really. You have to think about what it is you want to do with the money, because that's when it will strengthen that power. So our thoughts stimulate that interest and gain the attention. So we have to keep our thoughts stimulated, get the interest, and gain the attention. Third thing we have to do, so interest, attention. Third thing is expectation. I've kind of touched on this a little bit already, but as your attention intensifies, you have to be grateful for what you have and what you're about to get. And when you can be grateful for something you don't already have, that is another level of gratitude. And so we have to be able to be willing to accept and believe that's going to happen. We have to expect it to come into our life. And we get what we expect. And that's how I got the ring. I expected to get a ring. I expected to win this ring. That's how my son got a scholarship. He never thought that it wouldn't be a full scholarship. No matter how many times I said, no, wait, remember, they only said 1/3 to 1/2. He expected a full scholarship. It couldn't have been anything less. I remember one time, I think it was about his junior year in college, and got his college bill, and they were charging him a couple $100 because, tuition price went up, and they had the original one. And he goes, no, my scholarship said a full scholarship, no matter when the prices rise. And so he got out, he contacted, he See, he was determined. He had a full scholarship. Now, me, on the other hand, I'm like, it's just a few $100. We'll just pay it, but no, he was determined. He had earned that full scholarship. He was going to make sure he had it. Anyway, doubt, worry, fear, desire will be cut off. Okay. So we got to keep that doubt and fear and worry off. And, sometimes we fear success as much as we fear failure. And sometimes we don't want to, because we fear that success. That's when we start to say, oh, well, yeah, this can't be it. And we start to doubt. So we have to be really careful about that. So when our desire becomes so strong, it becomes a burning desire, which is what Napoleon Hill would talk about in Think and Grow Rich. That desire has to become burning desire. It has to become a passion that you have to have. And you get so into it that you're willing to do the things and take the steps and the actions that you need in order to fulfill that. So your mind strengthens to the point where failure is not an option. I don't know if you remember watching Apollo 13, the movie. And of course, I lived during that time period. But in Apollo 13, when those astronauts were stranded and they were having all that engine trouble and they weren't sure at first whether they could bring them back, the person in charge said, failure is not an option. That's the way you have to be. Failure is not an option. You have to succeed. And I was just talking about this on a video I made, that when I first started my coaching business, thinking that, all I had to do was just tell people what I was doing and they would come to me. And I just expected that to happen. And nobody did. And so what I didn't realize was I had the desire, but I did not have all the tools I needed at the time. And so I had the desire, I had the image, but I wasn't doing the things I needed to do. And I wasn't doing them a certain way. And I wasn't thinking in a certain way, like Wallace talks about. And I didn't believe. I did not believe. And so that non-belief started to cut me off. But the one thing I did is I had tenacity. I wasn't going to quit. And so I just kept going. So you have to develop that expectation, and you have to develop the feeling that you're not going to quit. Because if something goes wrong and you start to back away, then the universe sees that as you're not that interested. And when you get an idea, you need to move quickly on it, because the universe expects you to move very quickly on an idea. And I mentioned this a couple weeks ago. If you don't move on it, somebody else will. So you've got to make sure of that. So in a minute, I'm going to get into a book that I'm going to share with you some really good quotes about the law of attraction. But I want to just kind of go over the steps that we need. So we have to have a good goal. We have to clarify it. What is the desire that we want? And build an image in our mind of what that desire is. We have to focus on that daily, not once a week, not once a month, daily. In fact, multiple times a day, you should be looking at that goal and focusing and thinking. You might want to take some time in the morning and in the evening at lunchtime, just like you eat, 3 times a day to feed your goal. And then you need to get that doubt, worry, fear out of your way and not allow it to get in there. When it comes, say, go away. I am not going to think that, and change your thoughts. And then you need to avail yourself of the opportunities that are going to come, because things are going to come to you, and you have to kind of distinguish which ones you think are opportunities. I'm a firm believer that nothing happens by accident, and that when you meet somebody and when an opportunity comes, it's exactly what you're looking for. There's a reason it's coming your way. And I know, just thinking about my son, when he did not get selected for the one baseball team, in fact, they weren't even watching him when he was trying out, which infuriated me. And I kept thinking it was one of two things. Either they know he's going to be on the team or they don't want him. And I believe, now that I understand all this, that the universe caused them not to watch my son, because that wasn't the team the universe decided he was to be on. Now, some of you might think that's a little too woo-woo and a little too far out there, and that's okay. When you have an experience like I had at that moment, you understand. In fact, when he got that scholarship, I also knew at that moment, well, even before that, when the school was interested in him, but when he got that, I understood completely that the reason that other team didn't pay attention to him when he tried out was because it had to be that way. I didn't understand at the time, but once it happened, I'm like, it had to go that way. It was not because he wasn't trying out and not doing a really good job, because he was, but it had to happen. And sometimes we get really disappointed when we don't understand that philosophy. But if we start to look at it like that disappointment or that thing that went wrong had to happen because there's something better out there, then you start to shift your thinking. And that's the way you've got to be all the time. When you're disappointed, there's something better out there for me. That wasn't the way I'm supposed to go. There's something, and it may not be immediate. It may not happen. You may not see that result quickly, but eventually you're going to see it. It may take years, it may be a decade. And then you look back and you say, well, that had to happen. Because had that not happened, I would not be the person I am today. So everything happens for a reason. That's my firm belief. Success is not a straight line. So don't ever think that your success is going to be from point A straight to point B. It is going to go through all kinds of curves, disappointments, roadblocks, whatever you want to call them. They're going to get in your way. Be aware of that. Don't stop. If you've got that dream and that goal that you want in your heart, don't stop. That's the only thing that will keep you from obtaining that goal, is your stopping. And then the next thing I want to talk about is you earn success. Success is not given to anybody. The world doesn't decide, okay, that person's going to be successful, that person's a failure, that person's successful, those two are failures. No, the world doesn't do that. It's your choice. So if you're not successful now, look in the mirror. It's your choice. So success is not given. It doesn't appear, excuse me, sometimes it might appear like it's luck. There's no such thing as luck. There is such thing as being prepared for opportunities when they arise, and that sometimes appears as luck. But those people are prepared. So we don't know with people when they seem to have this amazing success. We don't know all the experiences they've gone through. And we all go through different experiences. So we can't compare ourselves to somebody else. And that happens a lot. You know, you might look at somebody and say, well, look what they've done in 3 years. Look where I'm at. You know, we cannot compare because we've all come from different experiences and different thought processes. And the sooner you get to the thought processes that will get you to where you want to be, the better off you are. Now, this is some things from a book called The Secret. The Secret is a movie by Rhonda Byrne. She produced the movie, and she also wrote this book. And there's some quotes in here and some information. But what I want you to realize is your current reality or your current life is a result of the thoughts that you have been thinking. So that's how important your thinking is to you. The thoughts that you think create your reality. Now, some of you may not believe that. Some of you might think I'm just absolutely crazy, but your thoughts create your own reality. And expect what it is that you want, that expectation. So here's what's in this book about expectation. This is by Bob Proctor, who was my mentor and my personal coach. Bob Proctor says, desire connects you with a thing desired. So whatever it is you want connects you with the thing desired. And expectation draws it into your life. So as soon as you desire something, you're connected with it. Expecting it in your life is what brings it to you. So you can desire something and not expect it, and you're not going to get it. But when you desire something and you expect it, it has to come into your life. Expect the things you want and don't expect the things you don't want. And that's what so many people will do. You'll say, what do you want? Well, I don't know, but I know I don't want whatever. It's a funny thing with the word don't or not. The world doesn't seem to understand that word. And so if you say, I don't want this, you can attract that very thing into your life so quickly because it doesn't understand that negative word, not or don't want. Okay. When you look at the current state of affairs and define yourself by that, then you doom yourself to have nothing more than the same in the future. So when you look at your life as it currently is, and you believe that that's it, and you don't look beyond that, you have doomed yourself to this being as far as you go. And it says here, all that we are is a result of what we have thought. That is just how powerful thought is in your life. All that you have is the result of the things that you have thought. So if any events or moments did not go the way you wanted, replay them in your mind in a way that thrills you so you can create your own thought process and you can change the story. As you recreate those events in your mind exactly as you want, you are cleaning up the frequency from the day and you are emitting a new signal with the frequency for tomorrow. So you're changing the thought. You're changing what's going to happen. With all this, again, you still have to be grateful. You have to have that gratitude, that feeling of gratitude for everything that you have. It's really sad when you ask somebody, tell me 10 things you're grateful for, and they can't, or even 3 things they're grateful for. What things are you grateful for? Could you name them? Could you have 10 different things you're grateful for every day for a week? That'd be 70 different things that you're grateful for. Yeah, it can be anything. Grateful for, being an American citizen, grateful for the air that you're breathing, grateful, for the house that you live in, whatever. But we have to make sure that we stay in that feeling of gratitude. So here's another quote. You are the creator of your life. And so begin by intentionally creating your day. So we know that our thoughts create what happens in our life and we create our own reality. So why don't we start building that with intention? And how do we do that intentionally? Well, first we start with something that we desire, some interest in something. We pay attention to it and we expect it to happen. And that's how we create our own reality. Joe Vitale says, as soon as you start to feel different about what you already have, you will start to attract more of the good thing. So when you start to feel different about what you already have, when you start to feel that gratitude, you'll start to attract more into your life. And here's my favorite author, Wallace Wattles. He says, many people who order their lives rightly in all other ways are kept in poverty because of lack of gratitude. And that's in his chapter on gratitude. Imagine that. And he talks about, how you can do everything else right. But if you're not grateful and you don't do it with the intention of feeling grateful, then you still separate yourself from the good that you desire. So we need to be very careful about what we do. It says here, when you are visualizing what it is you want, you're building that image, you are emitting the powerful frequency out to the universe. And thought is very, very powerful. I talked about that a couple of weeks ago, how it is, like the speed of light. It's just super, super powerful. And so that thought gets emitted. What thoughts are you thinking? And that's what you have to be so careful about. You've got to think about the things that you want, not the things that you do not want. And then that's how you attract them into your life. Alexander Graham Bell says, what this power is, I cannot say. All I know is it exists. So it is very powerful. This whole idea of attracting, and that's what he's talking about here, the attracting things to yourself. It's very, very powerful. Have this quote, the hows are the domain of the universe. See, you don't have to know how. That's not your job. You have to know what you want. Bob Proctor used to always say that. It doesn't matter what the hows are. It's what do you want? So the hows are the domain of the universe. It always knows the shortest, quickest, fastest, most harmonious way between you and your dream. And going back to my son, he didn't get on the travel team he wanted because that wasn't the answer. He didn't know that. The universe knew that. The universe knew that a different travel team would lead him to that scholarship. The travel team he thought he needed to be on was the wrong one because it would have never led him to that school that needed him and that could provide him with that scholarship. See, we don't know that. So we have to trust. We don't need to know the house. We have to trust that point A and point B will connect. As you see the picture in your mind and you feel it, you are bringing yourself to the place of believing you have it now. So you see the picture and you feel it. You get excited about it. You got to put your emotions into it. So you see what it is you want. You start to feel it. You get emotionalized about it. And then you start to believe it. And then you get it. And that's just the way it works. Genevieve Behrend, who wrote a really great book called Your Invisible Dream. Invisible, I think that's what it is. Invisible power. That's what it is. We all possess more power and greater possibilities than we realize. And visualizing is one of the greatest of these powers. And we do. That's why my show's called Your Inside Power, because we have all these powers inside of us that we don't usually use. And visualizing is one of them. She also says, nothing can prevent your picture from coming into concrete form except the same power that gave it birth, yourself. Only you can keep that beautiful picture of your desire from coming to you. Nothing else is keeping it from you. The universe is willing to give you whatever it is that you want. But sometimes we're not willing to accept it. So keep that in mind. Nothing can prevent your picture from coming into concrete form except the same power that gave it birth, yourself. When you allow a thought or doubt to enter your mind, the law of attraction will soon line up with the one doubtful thought after another. It's not what you want. So we have to go back to that visualizing, believe that we can get it. Imagination, this is from Albert Einstein. Imagination is everything. It is a preview of life's coming attraction. Well, it's a preview if you use it right. If you're actually believing, going through those steps, you're building that interest, you build the image, you build the interest in it, you start thinking about it, you desire it, it becomes a burning desire, you give it attention daily, and then you expect it. And then you are going to get it. So, I'm just looking at this and thinking, we have these great philosophers that are giving you statements about this. We have scientists that are giving us statements. We have people that have studied this. And here's one from Jack Canfield. And we'll conclude with this one. Decide what you want. Believe you can have it. Believe you deserve it. And believe it's possible for you. And then close your eyes every day for a few minutes and visualize having what you want, having what you already want, feeling the feelings of already having it. Come out of that and focus on what you're grateful for already and really enjoy it. Then go into your day and release it to the universe and trust that the universe will figure out how to manifest it. If you want more information and want to talk about your desires, please reach out to me. I've put my calendar link in the show notes. And remember, interest, building that burning desire, giving it attention, and believing that it is yours.